Hello, Mr. Bolden. I'd like to thank you for coming to Cleveland. It's nice to see you again. You had a tantalizing hint when you were discussing propulsion and NASA. There is, as you may or may not know, a technician at Plumbrook. His name is Dr. Borowski. He's working on nuclear propulsion. He can guarantee pretty much the power of the Hoover Dam from an engine the size of a garbage can. This might not be a bad way to send human beings to Mars. You could also send instrument packages to some of the nearby stars on the same time frame as you are doing with the current Pluto mission. Is there any plans to develop this technology?
We're looking at all types of technology. Nuclear propulsion we have utilized from the very earliest days in NASA, but we've always used it for deep space missions, robotic missions. Whether that is a technique that we use for human propulsion or not remains to be seen. I'm hopeful that we look at some of the ion engines and some of the smaller electric propulsion engines that have been developed here at Glenn, or the development started here in other places, that we'll be able to find some of we've got to speed up the time of transit if we want to get to Mars safely for human beings. And so when I talk about game-changing in-space propulsion, and I'm very confident that we're going to find that. My guess is some of it will be nuclear. It's something the nation has to come to grips with, to be quite honest.
Mr. Bolden, will you comment on the wisdom, I think it's wise, of transferring the space program from government to private enterprise, both in the near term and the eventuality?
Can I comment? Let me clarify something. We're not transferring responsibility for the space program to the private sector. What we're doing, remember I talked in my comments about not just technical challenges, but other challenges. Improving our procurement systems, improving the way that we contract. We're changing the acquisition strategy when we talk about empowering commercial entities to provide transportation to low Earth orbit. I like to tell people there are two things that we need to do in terms of space. We need access, which is getting people there, and we need to be able to explore. NASA cannot do both. We've tried that. The Constellation program, which was an incredible vision, I will say. The vision for space exploration that followed the Columbia accident and brought us the Constellation program was a brilliant vision. And if you look at the President's vision, it doesn't differ a lot from the vision for space exploration. What it does differ in is the amount of money that President Obama is putting toward technology development, toward science, particularly earth science and climate change research. So that's where the difference is. But the access to space should be provided by commercial entities. And the reason it should be done is because that's what the National Space Act since 1958 has told us to do. It's told us that NASA should rely as much as possible on the commercial sector. Now, my job is not to build an industry, but my job is to facilitate the success of the commercial sector. A lot of people want to say, once we start doing this, then we are going to return to our position of dominance in commercial space. Not true. There's another piece that has to be done, and that's we have got to do some reform in our export laws, the way that we do business with other countries. Otherwise, people will continue to go offshore to launch rockets and the like. So President Obama understands that very well, Secretary Clinton, Secretary Gates. I think you see most of our political leaders or political appointees agree that we've got to reform some of our rules and regulations in terms of technology transfer and the like, if we're really going to recapture the lead in commercial spaceflight.
General Bolden, you talked about the advances in technology which are affecting the space area, which you're so familiar, and certainly those advances have been many. To send individual astronauts to planets or to space stations is very expensive. Many scientists feel that very similar results can be found by sending non-manned missiles to planets or to space stations. To what extent is that true, and to what extent do you feel that the things that are discovered when live astronauts are there cannot be found when there are not live astronauts sent to space stations?
There is truth in what you say in terms of the fact that there is much to be gained by sending robotic missions to places that we want to send humans long before you send humans. If you look at what we're doing on Mars, we have had, I forget the total number, but right now we have Spirit, Opportunity, Phoenix, which is dead, but we have had robotic precursors, if you will, roaming over feet at a time of the Martian surface. The difference is when you put humans there, then you can range miles at a time. Another difference, for example, is a robotic precursor. We don't have, and some of you are going to disagree with me, some of you computer guys, guys and girls. To my knowledge, we don't have a computer yet that has good peripheral vision and can say, ooh, that rock I need to pick, the way that the Apollo astronauts did. Many of the samples that we have in the lunar repository at the Johnson Space Center would have never come back to Earth had we sent a robotic mission to pick up lunar samples, because they would have gone to a designated place, a designated spot, picked it up, brought it back. A number of the lunar samples that we have, some of them that have turned out to be the most productive and promising, came because an astronaut said, you know, when Dr. So-and-so took me to the Grand Canyon and talked about this rock, that looks like one of those. And so I'm going to take it back. I don't have a clue, because most of them were like me. And that's not true. They were much smarter than I. But many of them said, you know, that just looks like an interesting rock. And so I'm going to put it in my satchel and I'm going to take it back. A robot doesn't have the capability of doing that just yet. Now, I'm not saying we won't be able to. I think most of us in NASA believe that we should make it as safe as possible before we send a human somewhere. And we will do that. But that still does not alleviate the critical importance of putting a human presence in a place across the mountain, or on the other side of the river, or on the other side of the ocean where you want to know what's going on. So that's why I really think it's critical. You know, if we want to continue to be the leaders of the world in all aspects of civilization, when we stop thinking it's important to send a human to the other side of the mountain, then we give up our leadership. So when people challenge President Obama in this budget and say he is giving up our technological leadership in the world, I defy that statement. Everything that he is doing in this budget is ensuring that we will be able to get to the other side of the mountain or the other side of the river and find out what's over there.